Hello and welcome to episode 21 of the Spotlight Games podcast. My name is Patrick Schweigert. You can call me Patrick, and I am joined by my sweet boy, Cayman. How are you, Cayman?
Doing great, Patrick. Doing fantastic. I've got
Yeah?
yeah, I think I'm starting to get what they call PlayStation thumb.
Oh.
Yeah. A little
Back
teaser
in
for
my day, they
mm.
they called it a different kind of thumb from doing different things, if you know what I'm saying.
Spicy things.
Why do you have PlayStation thumb, Cayman?
Well, we'll just put it this way. I've put 40 plus hours into a game over the
Wowie,
last
wow,
few
wow, wow.
days. So, as you can imagine.
Well, we're gonna get into it, folks, because this is the Spotlight Games podcast. We're going to talk about the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get this show by subscribing to our YouTube channel, or you can subscribe in your favorite podcast app. While you're there, you can rate it, you can review it, you can tell your friends about it, you can just listen to it over and over and over again. You got options. We're all about options here at Spotlight Games. Don't forget, you can be on the show by emailing us your thoughts and questions to mail@spotlightgames.net, or like one of our listeners today did, you can DM us on Twitter at SpotGamesPod or on Instagram at Spotlight Games Podcast. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, am I saying that right? I'd be remiss.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say our newest episode of Save Trash Cinema that launched this week. I feel like we're just going to keep saying this every week, but it is objectively our best episode.
It's a banger.
Ton of fun. It's a banger, ton of fun. Our friend Devin Hales was on it. If you don't know Devin, she is famous. She was on a show. She's been on several shows, but she was on a show on Netflix called Teenage Bounty Hunters. She's on the episode with us. We dissect Zombievers, the modern grindhouse classic, and we get raunchy. We get we say some things.
We get
I really
real.
I really hope
exhausting.
my mother, if she ever listens to anything, I just hope it's not that one, because we said some things on there that I think would make her blush and make a lot of moms blush, including Stacy, your mother. But we have a great show for you this week here on this program, the Spotlight Games podcast. We're going to be talking about Horizon Forbidden West, the newest PlayStation exclusive that has been launched by Guerrilla Games. They are, one of the premier studios in the PlayStation studios. Their biggest game, the sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn, is out, and we have both been playing. So we're going to talk about that. And then in classic Horizon fashion, it has been very quickly followed up with potentially one of the greatest games of all time, apparently, Elden Ring. That's been released with some jaw-dropping reviews. So we're going to do a little reviews roundup for Elden Ring. We're probably going to smooch along the way, as we often do. So why don't we jump in, Cayman, with what we've been playing as we start, every episode here at the Spotlight Games podcast. I want to start us off, though.
Okay.
Because I've been playing more Pokemon. I spent the weekend dog sitting for my parents for sweet baby Molly, Penny, and Roxy. And so I didn't have as much time to play Horizon, but I've been playing a lot of Pokemon. I have essentially 100% of the game at this point. I've put in like 85 hours. I've had an absolute blast playing Pokemon Legends Arceus. I have every Pokemon you can get except one. And now, honestly, my experience with this game has suddenly been very soiled. It's been spoiled. It's been soiled and spoiled.
Why is that, Patrick?
So I text you. I say, Cayman, look at this. I text you a picture of my Pokédex. It says I have seen 240 Pokemon. I've caught 240 Pokemon, and I've maxed out 240 Pokemon's Pokédex entries. I'm feeling like hot shit. I'm feeling on top of the world. I'm feeling like Ash Ketchum ain't got shit on me. And you text me, and you're like, I don't remember exactly what you said, but essentially you were like, hey, that's not everybody. And I'm like, what the fuck? The game told me it was everybody. There's like a final mission that's like, you can only do this once you've caught everybody. And when you catch everybody, they're like, come do this final mission. So I took that to mean I caught everybody. Turns out there are 2 extra missions in this game that require you to have a save file from the most previous 2 Pokemon games, Pokemon Sword and Shield, and then Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. I had one for Sword, so I uploaded that because I'm on my new Switch, so it wasn't there. That's why I didn't trigger it first. So I upload that to my new Switch, play it. So now I have 241 and I've maxed out 241. But I didn't fucking buy the other Pokemon game, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and I have no interest in buying that game. And now I can't fucking complete my Pokédex unless I go buy that game. And I think that is absolute trash.
Yeah, you're spot on with that one. That is like I believe like hiding anything behind a paywall is
Yeah.
offensive. Hiding the ability to like fully complete a game
Yeah.
behind a paywall is like way worse.
Way worse. Like,
Way worse.
make it cosmetic. Make it, I can only get like a certain shiny type of a Pokemon if I have the save file. Make it something that doesn't keep me to where I can't 100% essentially what is like what you would 100% in the game. Obviously, I can go try to get all of the 242 Pokemon shiny versions, which is probably not even possible since like the legendary ones, I doubt they're shiny legendaries. But it's like the base way of 100% in this game, I can't do unless I spend another $120. $60 each for one Pokemon each.
Absolutely insane.
Absolutely insane. Complete and utter horseshit.
Okay,
And
so if we table the bad business practice
yeah,
the Game Freak and Nintendo have
yeah.
included in the latest Pokemon, if you just table that, forget about it. What are your final thoughts now as someone who is officially a Pokemon master?
So it's a little hard to separate them because I was feeling
Sure.
so good about it, and then that conversation really completely 180'd the game for me in a way.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I it would be a front runner for Game of the Year for me right now.
Mm,
Only because of how fun I've had with it, how much fun I've had with
sure.
it. Like when
Sure.
we first reviewed it, I never would have expected that I would have thought. Like I use this app GG. It's kind of like Letterbox but for video games. And when I complete a game, I put it on there in a list of like games I've completed this year, and I have all my previous years up to a point with all, and like they're in order of how of like my favorite to my least favorite. And I had beat Breath of the Wild right before playing this again, and so I'd consider putting Breath of the Wild uh, above it only because I was like, well, obviously, I think it's objectively a better game, but then I made the decision. I was like, you know what? I want to keep any games that I replay at the bottom of the list. So like
Sure.
maybe my least favorite game of 2022 will be number 15, and then number 16 might be something like The Last of Us Part 2, but I don't want that to be at the top of my list in a year it didn't come out, essentially.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um, but I was like, I really don't foresee Arceus even cracking the top 10 by the end of the year when we first reviewed it. But now, like, I'm thinking top 5 because I've just had so much more fun with it. Like,
Mhm.
once I got past the story and I started doing all the Pokédex kind of filling out, and maybe it's just like the way my mental state is right now, it has just been like a really fulfilling thing to just check boxes, a
Sure.
mindless thing to do, no stress until they tell me I need to catch 2 more Pokemon for 120 fucking dollars. But yeah, overall, I've had a blast with it. It completely turned itself around on me from having beat the story to where I am right now.
Mhm. It's funny you say that. I actually distinctly remember when Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were released, that early on in the game, like it's probably maybe an hour, 2 hours into the game, you'll come across a
Hmm.
little village. If you talk to a person in there, they give you a free legendary Pokemon to use.
Okay.
If you have Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee save file on your Switch, the Pokemon they give you is not like some random legendary that honestly no one knows or remembers because it's not very good. The legendary you get instead is actually Mew,
Mm.
which, if you're familiar with how Pokemon works, especially with how Mew works, Mew can learn any style, any move at all.
Yeah.
So it essentially turns the game into easy mode where if as long as you just keep leveling Mew up as you go and keep him in your party and then just keep teaching him, you can have or it you can give it um every single style of move. And
Cool.
so you can pretty much just one hit everything as you go.
Yeah.
And that's another one where it's like you can't fill out your Pokédex if you don't like the
Yeah.
true Pokédex if you don't have it, and that's just royally fuck. In my case, I'm on my second Switch actually, and so I played Let's Go Pikachu on the first Switch I had
Mm,
and didn't have the save file carryover. And so because of that,
you're fucked. You'd have to spend
yeah,
another
it's fine.
$60.
Yeah. And so I'm like, no, I don't want to fucking do that.
And the way Nintendo works, it's never going to be on sale for more than like $10 off.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it's not even
100%.
something to be like, oh, let me just wait until it's $15 just to get this one specific thing.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know. It obviously we're in a very privileged position where we can
Sure.
buy video games and like buy a lot of video games by the end of the year. But it just sucks that, especially for someone who, if they aren't able to buy multiple games, or even if they just don't play as many games as us and Pokemon just happens to be one of the games they play, and they're the kind of person that wants to be a completionist, there's this like hidden, and you won't even find it until 85 hours in, perhaps, thing where you
100%.
have to spend another $120. It just, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
really it's the more I sit on it, the more it might end up affecting where I would rank it by the end of the year. But just looking at the game with no other context, I think the game itself, I've had such a fun time with it. It's really
Well,
surprised me.
because I was the one that ruined it for you, the good news is I do have a physical copy of Brilliant Diamond. And so I'll bring that to you, Patrick, next time we're in person, which was rare that we're ever in
True.
person.
Now that we record virtually, we don't see each other as
Yeah.
much.
So I will bring it to you so that you can indeed finish your Pokédex and be a
Thank
true
you.
Pokemon
You're
master.
so good to me, Cayman.
I try.
You're so good to me. Well, I want to hear. So obviously, I've also been playing Horizon, but I've been talking a lot. So I want to hear
Sure.
your impressions. We're going to use this not as a review because the game is just far too big to be able to review it within what, half a week. But you have played over 40 hours already, so you have a lot to say about Horizon. So tell me your thoughts.
I do. I have a lot to say. Like Patrick said, about over 40 hours. I think I'm somewhere around the 43-hour mark. Um, According to the statistics on game completion that they do, and they give you that, which I think is fantastic. You should always include how much time someone's played. You should always include like game progression. I'm currently 50% through the
Oh wow.
game.
Okay.
Now, I do want to point out that from what I was reading online, if you use a trophy guide and you know exactly what to do to get the platinum, you can beat the game and platinum the game in about 30 to 40 hours.
Really?
So the trophy list is a lot easier. Well, I don't even think that the trophy list in the first game was too difficult, but they definitely have made it a lot easier this time around. The trophies seem, and I've avoided any story spoilers from the trophy list. I was just kind of looking to see, like, hey,
Yeah.
are there going to be any here that are going to give me a lot of trouble or things I need to watch out for while I'm
Sure.
doing this story? There is, from what I can tell, there is two big missable trophy at the very end of the game.
Okay.
But that solution, obviously no spoilers, would be easy to get around. With that being said, the game is massive,
Yeah.
like absolutely huge, and not in a way that like it's not massive in a way that's like Assassin's Creed or Far
Okay.
Cry. There's elements of that. Sure, you've got the rebel outposts that you have to clear. You got tall necks, which are like towers and or vantage points, which you have in
Yeah.
Ubisoft titles. So there are elements to it, but the game is massive in a way that it feels big.
Okay.
Everything feels big. It's lateral as well as horizontal.
Interesting.
And the way that they do it, and I think they do so well, is that the game also isn't, you don't feel like you're just going long stretches of time without seeing anything, which is
Sure.
like my biggest complaint with things like Far Cry or things like Assassin's Creed, is
Yeah.
that you might go trekking off on a horse for 20 or in a car for 20 minutes and not see a single thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think size of maps equate to a game being good,
Sure. Oh,
because like
absolutely.
for me, like playing games like Far Cry or Assassin's Creed, a lot of times that's frustrating because I'm like, it's dead. The world is empty. There's nothing here. Or it's filled littered with shit that I don't want to do. And what's great about Horizon is all of the side quests, like they feel purposeful. It's
Cool.
rare that you have a side quest that's like, go fetch me an item, like a fetch quest, which you see so often
Yeah.
in a lot of these open world games are
Yeah.
fetch quests. This game does not. Sure,
Can
there's
I
like
can I ask you a
errands.
question about the size?
Sure. Yeah.
So I am in the Daunt, which is kind of like it's like the first part of the game. So right now, like when I zoom out, I see a lot of gray map. Is
Mhm.
all of that the Daunt, or is that the rest of the full? Can I see the full map of the game from the beginning?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
You can
'Cause
see
I
the full
know,
map from the game.
like
I can
Days
tell it
Gone
to you.
was an example where like you couldn't see half the map from the
Yeah.
beginning. So I didn't know if it was bigger than what I see, because what I see
No.
is already really, really big.
Yeah. No, you can see the full map from the beginning. Um, I'll put it to you this way. I'm 43 hours in. I have not cleared the whole map yet.
Wow, like you haven't uncovered all the fog
No.
of the map.
But I also play games a lot different than other people. I
Sure.
like to try to clear areas out as I go.
Yeah.
I've gotten to a point where it's like some missions are taking me out of my zone that I'm in for
Mm-hmm.
story related purposes or whatnot, which I will say, I don't know how big the story is.
Sure.
Um, I've gotten so sidetracked doing so many fun things. Like I just go exploring. You'll find
Yeah.
these ruins that you have to explore, and they kind of include them in the first game. But in the first game, it's more like you just kind of climb up some scaffolding, or you climb up a mountain, and then you'll find like a coffee cup, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, cool, there you go. The ruins in this game are full puzzles,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah. I've
15,
done one.
20-minute long puzzles that are absolutely engaging. They never feel too difficult. They feel like if you just pay attention to your surroundings, you'll find the solution. Um, they're incredible, but it's not. That's not it though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's all like this game 100% is all about the side quests. It's all about the side quests. It's all about exploring the map. It's all about learning how you want to play the game. And the way that the game kind of takes you with the skill tree is it really can be like, hey, you can play the game however you want. It's really funny. Sydney, my fiance, she's playing as well. She hasn't gotten as far as I am, but I end up staying up late and playing after her for a few hours to try to
Yeah.
like get ahead. And I was honestly trying to get as much done before we did this episode so that I could try to review it if at all possible. I feel confident that I could give at least an initial review and progress score
Sure.
for the game. So I've done a lot, but it's like she plays a lot melee focused.
Okay.
So when she enters an area, she just goes in gun swinging. She doesn't care. It's just take, and she can play like that. For me, I love to enter into a map, try to clear out as many enemies as possible. And then if things go sideways, which they obviously always do,
Right.
because I'm terrible at stealth games, I ended up can go in and clean house. And a lot of people had said, like, oh, well, the game makes you focus on just being stealthy. And it's like, no, it fucking doesn't. You can play this game however you want. If
Yeah.
you want to just lay traps and lure people into traps the whole time, you can do that. If you want to play like me, which is like a stealth hybrid, which more focused on stealth, you can. If you want to be like Sid and you want to play it hands on, where you're just because you get a new weapon called these shredder gauntlets that like throw, it's like a melee ranged weapon. So they even include
Ooh.
like new weapons that really set, and you can define the way you play however you
Cool.
want. And then your armor plays into that as well. So you can get armor sets that are going to boost stats for the way you want to play. You can also dye your armor so your armor looks however you want. You can add face paint so you get your Aloy is going to look drastically different than someone else's Aloy,
Sure.
and the way you play the game is probably going to be drastically different than someone else. And that is the most I could ask for a game. And we haven't even scratched the surface on just how fucking gorgeous this game is.
Oh yeah.
Like I want to avoid spoilers at all costs, but this game is incredible to look at.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly playing, I want to say it was The Last of Us Part 2, and then Ghost of Tsushima came out. I think that's how it went, or maybe it was flipped. Either way, when I was playing those games last year, really, I was like, okay, this is how do you make it look better than this? Like these are gorgeous games. And then Horizon Forbidden West comes out, and you're like, this has set the bar. Like, and
Yeah.
this is still a cross-gen game, which also makes it very interesting. Like, can you imagine what it's going to look
I
towards the
know.
end
I
of the
know.
PlayStation 5's life
Yeah.
cycle?
To answer that original, so it was Last of Us and then Ghost of Tsushima.
Okay, then there
Yeah,
you go.
and that was one of those things where it's like, wow, The Last of Us, prettiest game I've ever seen, and then Ghost of Tsushima blew us all away. Yeah, no, I found the game really pretty. I'm curious, have you had any issue with bugs? Because in my like
Mm,
4 to 5 hours, it's actually been really bad for me so far with bugs.
interesting.
Yeah.
So there's the occasional texture pop in.
Okay.
Um, that'll happen occasionally,
Yeah.
and never to the point where I'm like, "Oh, this is terrible." Like
Yeah.
I've never had a bug. I haven't had a bug so far that has been. I'd say that back. I had one bug where I ended up clipping in. There's like a certain point in the game where it's like a side quest. It's completely optional to do, where you have to like exit a cave while it's collapsing.
Okay.
Somehow I got stuck in the rubble. And so I
Sure.
reloaded my save and then went through without any issues. So I
Yeah.
did have
Yeah.
one bug where it was a little rough. But outside of texture pop-ins, and then at the beginning of the game, I thought there was a lot of lens flare.
Sure.
That was annoying to me. And then as we've discussed about Aloy's hair has a bit
Her
of a mind of
Medusa
its
hair.
own. Yeah, it,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem as bad later in the game. Same with the lens flare, like
Yeah.
doesn't seem as bad. Part of me wants to think that the reason being is because there was a patch that was released a couple days ago, so I'm
Gotcha.
wondering if that patch kind of addressed
Could
some of that
be.
stuff.
You know, I had texted you, came in. I was, but yeah, I was about 3 hours in, and I was like, I can't. I'm so surprised at how distracting her hair is. Like, I don't remember being so distracting last game, but it's she'll just be standing still. She might even be inside, and her hair is just like completely moving as if she is either underwater or in the midst of a very strong breeze. And it just like wouldn't stop. So I was wondering if that was perhaps a bug or if that's just they're really just doubling down on the hair physics. But for me, the one that was really disappointing for me, hearing you talk about the relic puzzles and how much
Mhm.
you're enjoying them, the only one I've done so far was kind of ruined by a bug, unfortunately. So I'm
Oh
really
no.
like itching to get to the next relic because those are my favorite parts of like Assassin's Creed games too. Like I'm
Sure.
a sucker for the old world stuff or the like the
Yeah.
in that game the modern world stuff. I find all that so fascinating. It's like the thing that continues to draw me into Assassin's Creed. It's actually not the settings of the actual games themselves, but
Yeah.
to keep it on track here, the first one that you come across, it is, if I remember correctly, a hotel.
Yes.
It's like a little hotel, like a bed and breakfast type hotel. Like it's a small building. It's not like a massive skyscraping hotel. Um, and within it you kind of go through these couple rooms and there's this box that you bring from like room 1 to 2 and 3 or whatever,
Yeah.
and the box for me, there was an issue where when I would climb on top of the box I would fall into it, and the top
Oh,
of the box like wasn't a surface I could stand on.
interesting.
So the what ended up, I was able to make it work to where if I just like really quickly pressed X as I was getting on, there would be enough time where she could just immediately jump, but
Mm,
sometimes she would still fall in, or like because I'm having to jump so quickly, I wasn't able to really like do the direction very well. So
sure.
that one, it ended up being very frustrating for me, but I could tell like this game is huge. It's like the second day it's been out. Like I'm sure these things are going to be patched and fixed. It was just disappointing that one of the first things that was like I was excited about in the game just like didn't work for me. But it
Yeah, that's
seems
a
like
bummer.
that's, yeah, it's a bummer, but I don't think it's not like anywhere near like Cyberpunk levels or like anything like that. It's just typical open world jank as opposed to like
Sure.
broken parts of the game, which still stinks, but
Yeah.
that's the
I
world.
I mean, like I said, outside of that one time I clipped in and I couldn't get out and I had to reset. Like
Yeah.
outside of that, I've had no issues whatsoever.
Yeah.
No bugs outside of just some occasional texture pop-ins will
That's good.
happen. And that's kind of one of those things where like the game's massive. It doesn't matter what game you're going to play. There's
Right.
going to be things like texture pop-ins. There's going to be
Yeah.
enemies will clip into things when they die. That just happens and that's something you just have to
Yeah.
like you just have to accept it.
Right.
But I no outside of bugs I haven't like that's the only bug.
That's good.
Technically, it's performed incredibly well. I will say that both of us we are playing on the PlayStation 5. I
Sure.
can't speak to performance on the PlayStation 4. What I did hear from what I've read up on was that it performs incredibly well and looks really good.
Hmm.
It taxes the PlayStation 4 to like its absolute maximum.
That makes sense.
And
It
which
probably
it,
is like The Last of Us Part 2 on PlayStation 4. It sounds like an airplane when you're playing it.
Yeah, yeah, and so
Um,
and that's another thing that just it sucks because PlayStation 5s aren't in abundance to
right,
purchase.
right.
We're lucky enough to be able to have some, but ultimately, I don't think you're gonna go wrong if you do have a PlayStation 4 and you wanna play it. I
Yeah.
think you'll play just fine. There was apparently a bug that has been addressed, that I did read that Gorilla did address it, where it was like if you enter rest mode, um, and switch profiles, sometimes you can lose, like, your save data can corrupt.
Oh,
So I did hear that from a couple people. I
yikes.
will say if you have PlayStation Plus, which if you've got a PlayStation and you don't have PlayStation Plus, you need PlayStation Plus. If you have that, then everything saves to the cloud and
Right.
you can easily pull it. If you don't, then that might be an issue that could pop up. So make a couple manual saves just to back
Yeah,
up your stuff, and
for sure.
you should be fine. But they did say that that bug was addressed and was fixed, so that shouldn't
That's
happen
good.
again.
That's good.
So
A couple questions from the audience came
sure.
in that I would like to throw your way since you've played way more than I have. This is from Nick. Hi, Nick. How are you? I'm good. Thanks for asking. Um, he asks first, he says, which is funny. We kind of mentioned this earlier. He says, sucks that the first game dealt with Breath of the Wild and now this one has to deal with Elden Ring. It is such unfortunate timing.
Yeah.
This has now happened twice. Um, Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring are now in like the top 10 all-time rated games of all time and came out within a week of Horizon both times. But his actual questions about the game, the first one is, have the mechanics been improved for fighting, Cayman?
Mm. Yes. So the mechanics for melee combat specifically are enhanced significantly. You can still play it as a hack and slash if you're going in to do melee combat. However, they now have included combos.
Yep.
And they do tell you, and it's something that I've witnessed firsthand, if you repeatedly use the same move, the enemy AI will actually start to counter it. So it
Oh,
makes you play, like, it makes you switch things up. They've also included this new mechanic that's called an energizer, where after you build up your charge, you'll build up a charge on your spear. It when you hit an enemy, it'll highlight a body part. If you shoot it with a bow immediately after it highlights, you got like a few seconds to do
hmm,
it. But if you shoot it with a bow, it actually sets off an explosion.
cool. I don't think I've experienced that yet.
So there's some really interesting melee mechanics. The using ranged weapons. Obviously you have your trip caster, and you've got your bombs, so you can shoot, like, throw like slingshot grenades that are all elemental. Same with the trip caster, you can set up traps around to trap enemies. You have your sharpshooter's bow that is for long range precision. It reloads really slow. However, you can fix that through coils, so it works its way out. And you got your hunter bow that shoots faster. It's more for like minute to minute combat. And then you've got a warrior bow that basically shoots all elemental and it shoots really fast. You have a bolt caster that just is like, it's like a submachine gun of arrows,
Nice.
which is really cool and interesting. Then, like I mentioned before, shredder gauntlets, which are more like hand to hand combat use. There's a ton of weapons, and those weapons, you can use them however you want. You can add coils, so the coil, or like the coils can be used to add like a boost in elemental damage. They could be used for assisting tearing off machine parts or doing weak spot damage to human enemies. You can customize it however you want, but each machine has a distinct weakness to it. So cycling through your elemental weapons is a good idea for certain combat scenarios. So it's always good, and I love the way that they implement it because you can essentially change up your playstyle, and it like kind of wants to help you
Yeah,
feel like a superhero. You
for
also
sure.
have what is called as a pull cast, where it'll be used for puzzles, solving environmental things. So it's like a rope with a hook on it, and it's a grappling hook.
Yeah,
So
has
during
to be
combat, you have some really awesome moments where you can grapple up places, launch
cool.
yourself off, pull out your bow. It'll slow time while you're
I haven't got to
falling.
do that yet.
It's like the combat is incredible. It's incredibly smooth, responsive. It feels very meaty.
Mhm.
So you have like a lot of really interesting things you can do. And it's like it's Horizon,
Yeah.
but just imagine Horizon just way fucking better.
Yeah.
And you've
They
got
brought
Horizon.
back the combat scenario where depending on the type of machine you're fighting, if they have like a weapon on them that falls off, depending
Yes.
on the weapon, you can pick it up and use that in battle, which I thought that was so cool in the last game. And I've already been able to do it once in this game
Mhm.
where all of a sudden you just pick up this like giant like tank missile or whatever.
And I will
Uh,
say too, the machines in the game, I've only encountered 4 out of like 30
really?
that are the same from the previous game.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Uh,
You've only counted 4?
no. I still haven't encountered like 8 different machines though, and I'm like, what else is? I just encountered one right before we started recording. I just encountered a new one, and I'm like, wow, like I can't wait to fight this again outside of like this one random encounter because this is great. But I will say, and it's a little spoilers, one called a Fire Claw. That is it's probably the size if you anyone remembers the old Thunderjaw.
Mm.
And this thing is huge. It's called Fireclaw, and it is a massive fucking bear.
Uh-oh. I'm scared.
And it will literally rip off chunks of the ground and just heave them at you.
Did
Like
you play
massive chunks.
Frozen Wilds, the DLC for the last game?
You know, honestly, I never did. I
There
watched
were
Sid
ice
play through it.
bears in that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
So
they were scary.
I've seen like a frost bear in like a certain area of the game, but this one is like 4 times the size.
No thanks.
And
No
can
thank
wreck your shit
you,
real fast.
doctor.
But yeah, I think what any other questions?
He had
Like
one other question. He
sure.
was curious on, and we can be very careful answering this question,
Okay,
mostly because I'm only 4 hours in.
sure.
But he wants to know how we're enjoying the continuation of the story.
You know,
I'm not far enough in to answer this question.
I would say if you have never played the game, I would obviously recommend playing the first game. This is for anyone. If you've played the game and you haven't played it probably in the last 6 months to a year max, watch a story guide
Yeah,
walkthrough. You
I
are going to
second that.
100%. There is a ton of recurring characters that play huge roles in this game. Um, the continuation of the story is really engaging. It really puts, and I don't want to spoil anything, but it really puts an emphasis for you to want to continue the story. And I feel like that's one of the downsides, right?
Sure.
Is that because there's so many things to do, and it feels like you're under such a time crunch with the story itself that it's like you kind of feel bad because you're like,
Yeah.
I'm ignoring saving the world so that I can go ride on a machine in a
Right.
race around a beach. Like,
Right.
that can be a little bit weird, but ultimately I think the story is really engaging. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of lore, especially with the Forbidden West. Like once you get out there, it really opens up and there's a ton of lore. You learn way more about the end of the
Really.
world than you did in the first game.
Yeah,
And that's really cool.
I'll say from my perspective, so again, I'm not very far in, but I started the game up and they do a little like 4-minute, very light recap of the
Mhm.
previous game's content. And
Yeah,
it
very.
reminded me of some things because I replayed Horizon for the second time, maybe like 2 to 2.5 years ago. So it wasn't when it launched. It's like I've played it since it launched, but it's still been long enough where I don't remember a lot. And I was like 10 minutes in and they were like referencing very specific things from the last game. And they're talking about silence and all these other things. And I'm like, pause. I need to go watch a complete story recap because
Yeah.
they're doing some deep cuts in the story that I don't really need, but I want to get the full, like the full story they're telling. So I need to remind myself of these things.
Yeah.
But they do a good job of, if you want to remember those things, if you want to go and kind of relive those things, do it. Otherwise, we're still going to tell you a story that you'll be able to follow, and it's still going to make sense, and you're still going to have that basic context of the first
Mhm.
game. But
If
yeah,
you have an hour's worth of time to kill, my suggestion is there's a YouTube channel called Suggestive Gaming. Suggestive Gaming does a recap video. It's about an hour long, but it is a very in-depth recap of the game, and I highly recommend watching that one outside of like the 15-minute one, mainly because they go over a lot of the characters that you will see that the shorter ones don't cover.
Cool.
And if you don't really remember the relationship or certain things, like that's a really good way because they really play into Aloy's existing relationships with previous characters and explore them much more.
I might need to do
Um,
that.
and so it's really good. But yeah, it's one of those where, like I said, if you've never played Horizon before, obviously play it. It's a great game.
Yeah.
This game is like Horizon on steroids. Like it just turns a great game into an even better game. But the drawbacks, and I do want to give some drawbacks before I like wrap up kind of
Sure,
like
for
my
sure.
final. One downside is the platforming can be a little iffy at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't always, you'll make a jump and it doesn't always stick, and that sucks. And that can kind of bring you out. You can fall really far sometimes, and that sucks. But outside of the platforming and it's very minor complaints on the platforming
Yeah.
because it's very rare that it doesn't work. But when it doesn't work, it's very frustrating. But there's those situations are few and far between. And then with the texture pop-ins and some of the glitches and some of the jank just from getting from an open world, um, I mean, those are honestly my biggest complaints.
Yeah.
A lot of people said like, "Hey," one of their complaints was like, "It's Horizon. It feels too much like Horizon," and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think you're playing Horizon because you want to play another Horizon. So why
True.
would you play it? This game is not going to, like we'll discuss with Elden Ring. This game does not reinvent the circle.
Yeah.
Um, reinvent the wheel. What the fuck was I saying? Like
Gotta
it's
go
not
get
going
some
to
new
reinvent the
circles
wheel.
for my car.
Yeah, it's not going to reinvent the wheel. It's not going to do game changer things. What it does is it takes existing elements from Horizon and from other really good open world games and just makes them way, way better. And if you can accept those minor issues, I give the game easily probably a 9.5. I think this is the best open world game that kind of follows the checkbox format
Cool.
that I've ever played.
Yeah.
The story is engaging and incredible. It is absolutely beautiful. The set pieces are massive. The gameplay, the moment to moment gameplay is addictive. The checkbox kind of mentality of going through and doing certain events is addictive. The side quests are going to be some of the best side quests you will ever play in a game. Like hands down. These side quests and the voice acting alongside the side quests. I was telling
Yeah.
Patrick, I was like, they're people that have just a few minutes worth of dialogue that are doing better than most modern games, if not majority of the modern games that have come out, do with their main characters.
Wow.
Like every single one of these side characters could win a BAFTA for voice acting. Like
Wow.
that's how good it is. And ultimately, this is an absolute must play.
Yeah.
If you've got a PlayStation 4, like I said, I'm not 100% sure how well it's going to run. From what I've read, it runs just fine. Or if you've got a PlayStation 5, this is an absolute must buy. Pick it up immediately if you've got time to play. You just have to accept that it is a time like you're going to want to play a lot of it for a long time.
Yeah.
So if you don't have time, this might be maybe not the best option, but it is 100% a must play, a must
Yeah.
buy. Get it, get your hands on it, enjoy it. You're not going to regret it. I can tell you that.
I do want to add one other critique on my end as well before we
Sure.
move on to Elden Ring. You touched on a little bit. A lot of people were saying, as you said, it's just another Horizon game. And at first, like before I had started playing it, I was with you. I was like, I don't understand how that's a complaint. But then I started playing it and I remembered a lot of the discourse then, which so many games are just compared to this game now, but it was compared to that game then because it came out around the same time. It was compared a lot to Breath of the Wild.
Sure.
And there were certain things about the open world in Breath of the Wild that Horizon didn't have that when comparing them, I mean, some things Horizon had that were better than Breath of the Wild, but in terms of platforming, in terms of traversal, there were a lot of things in Breath of the Wild that Horizon lacked that made me kind of as a player wish that it had some of those mechanics, specifically with the climbing. And with this game, they have really kind of expanded how climbing works. But I got to be honest, it is disappointing not being able to climb essentially anything that is there, like you can in Breath of the Wild.
Sure.
So not necessarily like because of Breath of the Wild, I just because like that game has that mechanic and it works really well in this big of an open world game that I've already in only 4 hours found myself like, okay, I want to get there, and if I could just climb up this mountain, uh, I could, but for some reason the game is saying I have to go climb over there, and it doesn't even look any different. That just they have it to where the grooves are, I guess, grabbable on that part of the mountain, and it's
Mm.
just like it's one of those things where it feels like it's being held back for the sake or for nothing, like for no sake per se. Like I think it
Mm.
could, and I will say, I'm only 4 hours in. That could definitely change as I play
I
more
mean,
in it. But
there's a distinct quest that kind of addresses a little bit of that.
really,
And
okay,
not doesn't really address why she can't climb everything, but it does address like why they put limitations, right?
okay, cool, and
Like
yeah,
the
I'm not
mm.
super far in, so I don't want to like really hold it against it. It is something that I've noticed a lot already.
You'll see from time to time there's going to be places where it'll be frustrating where you'll be like, I don't understand why I just can't climb this. But then there's also times where you're like, I can literally climb everything. And it really just depends on where you are. And in
Sure,
certain places, the reason that they don't include the ability to do so is more so puzzle based because it's like if you could climb everything, you will break the game and
fair.
you will break a
They would have had to
puzzle.
design the game completely differently.
Exactly. And so, but like for me at least, not a huge problem.
Yeah,
Not a huge, I'm not even, I look at it as a very minor issue from time to time when that does happen, where it is like,
for
why
sure.
the hell am I not able? And then there's stuff like, why am I not able to, like, I could easily crawl through this hole. And
Yeah,
it's like, you can't climb through the hole. You have to walk around. And then when you do walk around, you're like, oh, there's a reason why, because there's all of this stuff here. And
sure.
it's pushing me story wise
Yeah,
to do this. So it
but
makes sense in context, but I understand where you're coming from.
isn't it so good that it's such a nitpicky complaint? It's
Yeah.
not
Oh,
like
yeah.
this story is trash or the combat sucks. It's something like I wish I could climb all mountains instead of just certain ones,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, and,
Cool.
and Breath of the Wild kinda gave us that, and,
Yeah,
for what it's worth, I don't know.
yeah.
I wasn't as big on Breath of the Wild as everybody else was, but
Sure. No,
that's
that's
just my
fair. That's fair. I think Breath of the Wild does get a lot of acclaim, and I think there are reasons why it should. But I do think that there are some of the things that people lose their minds about Breath of the Wild don't do it as much for me. But the climbing
Sure.
is one of them where I'm like, it is just
Yeah.
so convenient that as long as I have the stamina, I can climb any surface I want to.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that we're gonna, obviously we're gonna continue giving you our thoughts on Horizon as we play more. I think by next week I'll also have a lot more to say, especially with the story related content. But why don't we switch gears and look to Elden Ring, the newest game from Software, the game creators of Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, all those what are kind of colloquially known as the Soulsborne genre. The newest entry that is co-written by George Railroad Martin of Game of Thrones fame and
I
Hideki
thought it was
Miyazaki.
George I thought it was George Roger Rabbit Martin.
Ooh, you might be right. George Roger Rabbit Martin. Those R's mean something, Cayman.
They do, they mean
Um,
something.
it's the reviews have dropped, and it is big dick slinging, Cayman, if I can be so bold.
Oh, yeah.
It currently has a Metacritic average of 97 out of 100. It is currently the 10th highest rated game of all time on Metacritic. Technically, it's 12th, but there are some duplicates in there, so I counted it out. It's 10th. On OpenCritic, which is the thing we use for our Fantasy Critic League, it is 96% rated on that, and it is the second highest game ever on the OpenCritic scale since OpenCritic has become a thing. And it is on track right now to score Cayman a whopping 32 points, which is more than any of us have as an entire team at the moment. So it was the first overall pick. He was smart to do it. But let's read a couple of the reviews. Cayman, would you mind reading us the first one? I just pulled the ones from IGN and GameSpot as we did last week. So if you could read the first one from IGN, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely. So IGN gave it a 10 out of 10, which rates as a masterpiece. This comes from Mitchell Saltzman. He says, It is no exaggeration to say that Elden Ring is From Software's largest and most ambitious game yet. And that ambition has more than paid off, even after 87 hours of blood, sweat, and tears that included some of the most challenging fights I've ever fought and innumerable surprises. There are still bosses that I left on the table, secrets that I've yet to uncover, side quests that I missed out on, tons of weapons, spells, and skills that I've never used. And this is all on top of PvP and cooperative play that I've barely been able to scratch the surface of. Throughout it all, while the fundamentals of combat haven't changed much from what you've seen before, the enormous variety of viciously designed enemies and the brutal but surmountable bosses have brought its battles to a new level. Even with all the threads I did manage to tug on my first playthrough, one of what I'm sure will be several, what I was treated to can easily be held amongst the best open world games I've ever played. Like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild before it, Elden Ring is one that we will be looking back on as a game that moved a genre forward.
High praise.
I mean, 10 out of
Incredibly
10.
high praise. Next one, another 10 out of 10 from Timur Hussein at GameSpot. Their verdict, or his the good of what he says about this game is its exploration and discovery that's driven entirely by the player. It's a stunning open world design that blends a new open world with the classic enclosed Soulsborne style locations. It's challenging combat that is both rewarding and thrilling. It's a visually stunning world that is diverse and memorable. It's a compelling, layered, and multifaceted story that demands to be analyzed and unpacked. The only bad thing he has to say at it is that still at its core, a difficult game designed for a specific kind of person with little in the way of approachability options. And that's where I want to start with this discussion.
Okay.
So I've been listening to some reviews. I've been reading some reviews. I've been listening to some podcasts about Elden Ring before we chatted. And the number one takeaway so far for me is, I mean, and you might remember in my one of my predictions for this year, I said you are going to be enamored with Elden Ring. It's going to be the first one that brings you in because of its approachability. Because we were kind of being led to believe that this was going to be the first approachable Soulsborne game. And apparently that is not really the case, although it is in some ways, but ultimately, like overall, it seems like it's really not that much more approachable than the ones that have come before it, which is really disappointing to me.
So I want to, and I think this is a great place to start by going over the difference between, because this game has brought out the worst of us again. And unfortunately, this has brought out additional toxicity from a player base who revel in the fact that this game is not easy.
Yeah.
And I want to bring up, this is Steve Saylor, who from Able Gamers. Steve Saylor says, please, please, please stop using the term accessible when you mean approachable. It does a disservice to those of us who are pushing for more accessible games. If you want to talk about accessibility, have disabled creators on to talk about that. I think accessibility should refer to options or gameplay that help disabled players. I know the word accessible can mean approachable as well, but in cases such as video games, approachable is the better term for expanding to alienated markets, as you suggested. So,
quick correction: Steve Saylor is the blind gamer. Steve Spawn is Able Gamer.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yes.
Continue.
We'll bring up Steve Spawn in a minute.
Yes,
Sorry about that. Thank you for the correction. So and that's the thing is when they're mentioning, and Timur Hussein says, still at its core, a difficult game designed for a specific kind of person with little in the way of approachability options. I don't think I think that works in context, but also doesn't work in context, right? A lot of the issues that people like this that are asking for easier options, they're not asking in the way of approachability. I accept the fact that Soulsborne games are hard. They're games that I don't think work for me personally because I don't want to beat my head against a brick wall for hours.
right.
What they're discussing here, and this is where a lot of the toxicity is being aimed, are for people who are asking for accessibility options. Elden Ring doesn't have a color blindness mode.
Yeah.
That is unacceptable in 2022.
I agree.
And when these people are arguing and people are coming back being like, oh, get good, fuck you.
Yeah.
They aren't asking for a game to be made so that anyone can play it. They're asking for a game to have options to make it where someone who physically is unable
Yeah.
to play a game to be able to play it. I'm privileged enough not to have any issues with accessibility. My eyesight, I know I wear glasses, but it's good enough with glasses. I can see. I don't have color blindness. That means that I don't have issues with certain areas of games that all bleed together into one color and you can't progress any further. Games like Naughty Dog's The Last of Us Part 2
Mm,
had so many options to make this work, and not including options that are just the most simple of things to
yeah.
include it's a poor look.
I agree.
Now, in terms of approachability, sure. Would I love it if Elden Ring had easier game modes? Absolutely. I would love to understand why people love these games, but apparently that's it. People love these games because they're hard. Because when you finish a game like that, you can wear it as a badge of honor, and that's fine. But purposefully leaving out options to help people who otherwise should be able to play this game just fine,
Right.
that's not okay.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
just it's not okay. And being toxic on top of that, telling people to get good or stop being a baby, things like that, like it's damning to the culture that all of these people are working so hard to fix.
I agree.
You know?
It's so disappointing. Like it, like what we talked about last week. There's so much of the gaming audience that is toxic dude bros
Mhm.
who all they want to do is gatekeep because gaming is the only hobby they have, and I guess they fear that like if more people are able to do it, then it'll be less special or for whatever fucking reason. But the truth of the matter is games should be for everybody.
Mhm.
And the only way that that can be done is if companies from the ground up build their games with accessibility options in mind. Steve Saylor also, he put out this video a few days ago. I think it was before the Elden Ring review started coming out. It's really good. I'm going to try to find it and share it on our socials. He goes through, it's like a 2-minute TikTok where he goes through like the different kind of levels of disability in terms of like how it can be affected by games. I
Mhm.
don't want to go too deep into it because I don't want to get things wrong, but he's like the thing, one of the biggest common misconceptions with accessibility is that so many people think it's only geared toward people with like permanent disabilities, but that's not true. Things like a long time ago, subtitles weren't in a lot of games, but subtitles can be helpful for people with short-term disabilities. Like maybe there's something that happened with your ears where like
Yeah.
you got a concussion or something, or you have tinnitus in your ears. And so you can't listen to the game. So you have subtitles so that you can still experience it. Or you just had a kid and you can't have the volume up because the kid's going to wake up. So but you still want to play the game. So you can use subtitles. And he kind of goes through the difference between permanent disabilities, short-term disabilities, and there's a third one that I can't quite remember, but
It,
it was a really enlightening video. Do you have it in front of you?
it's his third one was age. That as we
Age.
get older, the hand-eye coordination slows down. The ability to do certain like the hand movements are slower. Or we don't move as quick. We just don't work as quick, right?
Sure.
Um, but
But
you're
yeah,
like you
there's
spot on.
yeah,
It's and that's the thing. Like it's not going to hurt these games to include an option that's easier. It just doesn't. It
yeah,
doesn't hurt games at all. And like look, if you want to carry a badge of honor, pick up Wolfenstein and beat it on its hardest difficulty.
sure.
Pick up Doom and play it on nightmare mode. You want a badge of honor? Get that platinum.
And
Show
meanwhile,
it off.
me just wanting to experience the game, I'm going to put that shit on baby ass baby mode because I don't want to play that kind of a game for its difficulty. I want to play that kind of a game to kill Nazis
Sure.
because all Nazis should die,
Mm-hmm.
and blow shit up and have fun. Like that's
Yeah.
why I'm playing that game. I'm gonna go play something like Demon Souls or Sifu if I want a challenge.
Sure.
But I should still be able to, if I want to play Sifu or Demon Souls, I should also be able to say, you know what? I just want to get through this game and have fun while doing it. Give me this other option. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can still go fucking play it on the normal difficulty and make your Twitter profile a fucking NFT and fuck off, right?
Yeah. No, and that's true. I do want to point out. So with these reviews, for anyone who's never played a Souls game, I would recommend looking up reviewers who also have never played a Souls game and see what they say.
Sure.
Um, because you're gonna get a lot of these reviews are from especially Timur Hussein. He's like a diehard Souls guy,
Right. Yeah, it is a
and
very specific lens in his review.
exactly, which is totally fine. And I
Yeah,
say this about any review ever. Find a reviewer that plays the games that you like. Find a reviewer who has the same taste that you have and see what they think it is. Because I could tell you, hey, you should play Horizon. But if you played Horizon, you didn't like Horizon, then my point of view is moot at that point.
sure.
Like, don't play it if you didn't like it. Don't. There's no. You're not gonna like it again. It's just
Right.
like a Souls game. Like if you didn't like it the first time, you're probably not going to. But with that being said, there are people, Souls people, who have come to the defense and said that it is more approachable because unlike previous Souls game, this is an open world. Different areas have higher level enemies, more difficult enemies.
Yeah.
As you progress through the game, apparently you will level up. You'll get better, stronger weapons, stronger armor, and when you go back to, areas earlier on, you will basically be train wrecking
Sure.
everything that comes across your path and you'll be a monster. And so that does give credence that there could potentially this could be more accessible for
Yeah,
someone
for
or
sure.
more approachable for someone like me. Sorry.
And
Um,
I think something that's worth clarifying for the audience is the why behind why these games are so difficult. Just like
sure.
a very kind of basic description of how these games work. So essentially they're typically set in like medieval type settings and you're like a knight or whatever. And whenever you kill an enemy, you consume like its soul essentially. And depending on the strength of the enemy, it has a larger soul, a smaller soul, or like more of them. So maybe a boss might have like 1,000 souls or whatever. And you use those souls to power up your character. You can level up, that kind of thing. The trick is when you die, all of the souls that you have gathered are now stuck to that body that you died in. So now you have to make your way back to that body to get those souls. If you die again before you get there, all of that progress is gone.
Mhm.
So you might have gone through an area, you have 40,000 souls on you, you die on your way there, you die again. You just lost 40,000 souls and potentially like 4 hours of progress. So that's where the difficulty comes in because there's a lot of risk in going through certain areas and whatnot. So with that context, one tweet thread that I saw that was really, and I'm assuming you have the one that you sent me as well. You don't have to go get it if you don't. I just thought that might be one of the ones you had. Imran Khan from Fanbyte had tweeted out, which I thought was really interesting. He's doing a review in progress for Fanbyte, but he's like, I don't want to give it a score yet, or I don't want to finalize the review until I've gotten further. But there is a fundamental difference with Elden Ring compared to the other Soulsborne games, which is this is a game about exploration. And that's why so
Mhm.
many of the Breath of the Wild comparisons are happening. He was like, don't worry about just building up and getting as many souls or whatever they call it in this game. Don't worry about just trying to become better and be stronger. Focus on exploration.
Yeah.
See the world, find the world, uncover these things, have these jaw-dropping moments. And once you understand how the world works, then worry about getting the souls and that kind of thing. And that to me really excites me that
Mhm.
they've put a focus not just on getting from point A to point B. They have now put a focus on exploring this world, understanding how it works, and experiencing the story that way. And which I think translates to it being much more approachable.
So I would like to. This is for I'll read a bit. This is from Stephen Totillo from
Totillo.
Stephen Totillo. He was the former editor in chief of Kotaku. He's now one of the heads at Axios Gaming. This is what he says. He says, "I love seeing the glowing Elden Ring impressions from reviewers who adore the series. Would you like thoughts from someone who only dabbles in Soulsborns? I've played small amounts of half of them, plus most of Neo 1, which is smaller. I'm about 8 hours into Elden Ring. First, it's beautiful. I'm playing on PlayStation 5 and find its scenery fantastic to look at. I've been to some lovely places and generally like exploring the open world to discover impressive sights. Second, reviews say it's easier, which seems right insofar as there's lots of checkpoints and ample fast travel locations thanks to the open world. You can bail on a tough battle and go do something else. But there's a difficulty spike on the main quest path about 2 hours in that nearly made me quit in despair and switch to any of the other terrific recent releases I'm behind on. It's a reminder that many people will find this game, like its predecessors, too hard. The battle in question against Margit the Fell Omen was in the closed beta. It's a skill check and is really tough. Took me 2 hours of repeated fails. Thankfully, a save and travel point precedes it. My timing sucked. Dodges, blocks, counters got him to 50%, then he destroyed me. Fighting this enemy, I could tell that the series veterans would love it, would feel like, oh, this is still that kind of game. For me, that feeling, but with a feeling of dread. I want to see this game through. Was I worried? I was worried I wouldn't be able to. A pitfall of open world design is that players get choice paralysis. In theory, I could bail on the Margit fight, explore, find caves and loot, level up, and maybe be good enough, but I wasn't sure. Is that what the game was telling me to do, or was it telling me to practice there? Elden Ring is more open ended. You can customize your gear more. Had I erred in my build already, I wasn't sure. I did wander some, raised my axe 2 levels, then got my ass kicked some more. Summoned an AI ally and some ghost wolves, used them to distract. Eventually, I got good enough to be able to thrash Margit in his first phase quickly while my AI pals took little damage. And only then was I able to flail through the second phase, lasting just long enough to kill him in a most inelegant victory. I was glad to proceed, and I'm sure some of you will breeze through this fight and laugh at how pathetic my Soulsborne skills are. So be it. The next few hours that followed were far easier. I explored a creepy castle, fell for some serious standard traps, anticipated others. Eventually, I went back to a merchant, saw he was selling some letters that contained hints I needed them. They gave me ideas of where to explore. One brought me to a hidden sorceress who I was too unintelligent to learn spells from. En route to another, I stumbled upon an elevator that took me to an incredible underground river where I was swiftly killed. I didn't mind this. I met a guy on the surface nearby who asked me to clear a small castle I found earlier. Slowly, I was stitching things together. My time with the game has been fine. Like early post-plateau Breath of the Wild, I don't know yet if I will love it. Its world hasn't proven its excellence to me, but exploring hopefully will. I struggle to gauge where to commit and where to avoid. I'll play on, intrigued if yet intimidated.
Yeah.
And
It's such an interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and that's been kind of what the consensus that I've read, at least from people who aren't diehard Souls fans, have been like, hey, this game's going to kick your ass, and it's going to kick it over and over and over and over again. But it does give you the option to be able to explore additional areas, to level up, to find better gear, and, so forth and so on. So is there a world in which I would enjoy this game? I don't know. But I can tell you right now, I'm not purchasing it.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Look, I would love to be able to do it and come back and give you guys a review that's like, oh, this game's fantastic. I love this game so much. Everyone should try it. It's a lot better and a lot more approachable than previous games. But I also don't want to spend $60 on something that I might genuinely hate.
Correct. Yeah.
And I've already done it once for the show.
And
with Far Cry 6, and that was dog shit. So I don't know if I'm ready to spend another $60 just to get my heart broken.
I'm gonna buy this one physically so that you can have my copy when I'm done with it. Because I'm going to want to play this game, but I'm gonna want to finish Horizon first because I just love that world. But yeah, so that's once I start playing it, I'll start sharing my impressions and to kind of see where I land on it. It probably will be a couple weeks because Horizon's that big, but we'll see. Maybe I might try to dabble in them both. I don't know. But yeah, so we will be talking more about that as well. But right now, the biggest piece I think is Cayman just slapped me and Evan in the face with that score of 32 at the moment. So congrats, Cayman. Well, folks, that's our show. That is our sweet, sweet show. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching if you're watching. Again, as I said at the top, we would love it if you'd rate and review the podcast on the podcast app of your choice. You can follow me at Patrick Schwag. You can follow Cayman at Kid Cayman. You can follow the pod on Twitter at Spot Games Pod or on Instagram at Spotlight Games Podcast. And you can follow our sister show, we might call it, Save Trash Cinema. Newest episode this week with Devin, doing a dissection of Zombievers, out now on podcast services. And just a quick plug, if you're going to be at Days of the Dead this weekend,
Yeah,
Cayman and some of our friends are going to be there. I will not be there, but Cayman's going to be there, so
just
let him
look for
know.
the guy wearing the Save Trash Cinema t-shirt, and I'll be passing out some stickers. So if you want to slap a sticker of Save Trash Cinema on whatever you want, I'll have some there for you to take. So yeah,
there you go.
It'd be a great time. So if you're there, hey, hit me up.
And if you're not there, hit him up.
Then yeah, still hit me up. I need friends. I need people to talk to me. I'm lonely.
There you go. Well, Cayman, I, as always, thank you for coming on this ride with me.
Always.
I always look forward to these days when we record together. It's always so fun. But until we do that again, Cayman, I bid you adieu. I bid our audience adieu. I give them a sweet, sweet kiss on the forehead as they go to sleep tonight. Until then, thank you. I love you.
I love you. Bye-bye.